Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to Module 7 or Week 7. Let's talk about the reading for our class this week. So this week we're reading Chapter 7, Managing Project Risk. And project risk management is really about dealing with anything that can be unplanned or any kind of, we think about risks as being bad things, and usually they are. So, risk, when you define it, it's really about any unplanned activity or event that impacts a project. Not all risks are bad, some of them can become opportunities, so you want to think about that. The key is to have a good plan for responding to risks if they should occur. It's really all about planning, digging deep, trying to find out what could happen, and if it does happen, what are we going to do? How are we going to protect ourselves in the project moving forward? So this means that you need to identify and you need to plan for your project risks. So on page 175 of your text, there is a great 6-step process for risk management. First, we create a plan, and we do that by identifying our risks. Now, there's a great framework on page 177 that starts in the middle with your MOV, and it moves outward and to different rings around this circle. And you really should be looking at your project planning from that perspective. What can be happening at all of these various points throughout this framework? So take a good look at that framework and see if you can wrap your head around how that actually works for helping you identify risks, because what it's doing is it's pointing you in some very specific places to think about and to look for risks that can occur in your project. So then you analyze the risks, and there's various strategies for doing that. And part of the analyzing the risk is determining the impact of the risk on the project should the risk be realized. Should bad things happen, what could happen on the project? That's the impact of that risk should that risk be realized. You also want to develop a risk strategy, and that basically is how are we going to respond if this risk occurs. And there's various ways of responding through contingency planning, mitigation planning, transferring, etc. We'll talk about that as well. You also want to monitor and control risks, and that's a continual process throughout the project. You want to be looking to make sure that these risks you want to make sure that they haven't occurred, or you're going to be watching, you're going to be very carefully looking. And and also risk triggers. Part of the analysis and is determining what the risk trigger will be that will help you determine if a risk has been realized. So that's part of the monitoring and controlling, looking at those risk triggers to see if anything's happened. And then of course responding and evaluating, and that's implementing whatever response plan you determined in step 4 when you developed your risk strategy. So things that you need to know moving forward. You want to know those 6 components that we just talked about for the risk management plan and process. You also want to have a good handle on that framework, because you're going to use that framework in your activity this week for Husky Air to help you identify project risks in the Husky Air project. Risk analysis approaches, they're qualitative and quantitative type approaches. What does it mean by risk impact? How do you develop a response plan? And what does contingency, mitigation, avoidance, and transfer mean when we're talking about risk mitigation? Those are 4 different ways that you can respond to a risk should a risk actually occur. Okay, so that's what we have for this week. Continue on to the next video and I will discuss your assignments for Module 7. I'll see you there.